welcome to another episode of the Indie Author Mindset Podcast, episode 26, I think. Although I think it's probably a good thing if I've already lost count. This podcast is, of course, gratefully sponsored by Ingram Spark, the award-winning indie publishing platform that offers authors like you a way to get your paperbacks and hardbacks into over 40,000 bookstores and libraries worldwide. Let Ingram Spark take care of the details so you can focus on what you do best, which, of course, is writing. Get started today at ingramspark.com. Now, I know a few writers, while we're talking about Ingram Spark, and we are very open on this podcast, and Ingram Spark are very open too. A number of authors in the Indie Author Mindset Facebook group and who've contacted me privately have been having some issues with the Ingram Spark dashboard. I spoke to the CEO this week, and she has put some minds at rest, and I've got a little message from her to read out here. It's to do, she says, with the development team updating the underlying architecture of the Ingram Spark platform. Whatever that's meant to mean. I presume the technicalities can be left to the technical people. I'll trust they know what they're talking about there. They are making daily improvements, she says, and hopefully everything will be corrected soon. If you have any specific issues, you can pass them through to me, and I'll pass them on to her so she can have a look at those. She says, I can't tell you how much our current issues are frustrating to not only our customers, but also the entire team. And if we could fix it ourselves, we would have done already. But we have a fantastic development team who are working hard, but it will likely take them through to the end of June to get everything sorted. So if you are having some issues with the Ingram Spark dashboard, you're not alone. It's to do with a big update they've been doing, which is and has made the system a lot better in many ways, but some underlying issues have caused some problems there. But rest assured, they are working on it. They do know, and if you do have any issues, you can get in touch, and they will hopefully get those sorted for you behind the scenes. Now, moving on to some news in the industry this week. There's quite a bit floating around, so I'm going to crack on with it. Kobo Writing Life have announced that they've added a new model option for library distribution. Up until now, they've had the existing one copy, one user option of getting your ebooks purchased by libraries, essentially through the Overdrive platform. Using this, the library buys the book once at an increased, inflated price and lends it out where it wants. They've now introduced a new cost per circulation, CPC model, not the usual CPC you might know, cost per click, but cost per circulation, just to throw some more acronyms out there, which costs them far less per copy for the libraries, but you get paid for each copy in circulation. This should increase your chances of libraries offering your ebooks. There's nothing you need to do, so far as I can work out. It just gives the libraries a different option of buying the books in, so make sure that you are set up with Overdrive distribution in your KWL, Kobo Writing Life dashboard, if you subscribe, if you put your books into libraries directly through Kobo. I also noticed an article on the web this week from Dave Chesson over at Kindlepreneur. He put an article out trying to get to the bottom of how many words there are per page in a book. Now, this is something that makes me chuckle inwardly a little bit, because having knocked around in this industry now for a decade or so and feeling like a bit of a dinosaur, this is something that always crops up. People will say, well, how many pages is this ebook? Or this ebook is only X number of pages. And the fact is, the term pages, the concept of pages, when it comes to ebooks, means absolutely nothing. Ebook page count is pretty much meaningless because ebooks don't have pages. How can you count something that something doesn't have? There can, if you change your settings on your Kindle, you change your font size, you change the density, the margin size, the line width, the font itself. It can give you anything between 100 and 400 words on a page, in inverted commas, if you're counting the version of the screen you're looking at as one page. Different devices set up in different ways would take, for example, the same 100,000 word novel and they would count that as having anywhere between 250 pages to 1,000 pages for the exact same book. So how many pages does that book have? The simple answer is, in terms of how Amazon measures how many pages you've got and the page count that it puts on your product page, if you have a paperback published through Amazon, it will use the page count of the main body of your paperback. That's not to say exactly how many pages your paperback has, but the main counted pages. So, for example, if you've got a few copyright pages, introductions, things like that at the beginning, it won't count those. It'll count where you start page 1 in your own count and where you end the book. Bear in mind on this point that if you have a paperback box set out, the page count will need to be continuous throughout the book. So don't have page 1 to 300 for book 1 and page 1 to 285 for book 2 and so on. Make sure that page count continues throughout, because it'll only count your largest book otherwise. Dave has done some number crunching on ebooks and tried to work out how many words are on a, in inverted commas again, page on an ebook, and he's come out with a count of approximately 233 words per page on average for non-fiction, and an average of 280 words per page for fiction. Again, not sure what it all means. The fact that ebooks and e-readers don't have pages means the whole thing's a bit moot, really. But there we go. I thought it was very interesting and a good take on things there, as always, from Dave. Something else I found in the news this week, I was reading Ally's news update. They've had some furore over the National Emergency Library, which was introduced during the coronavirus crisis when it all first kicked off. It was a rebranding of the Internet Archive's Open Library. It suspended the controlled digital lending platform it had in place at during March, which meant it could only lend as many digital copies at one time as it had physical copies. Once that was suspended, they brought in new emergency procedures, which meant it could lend as many copies as they had demand for. And that, of course, also included books under copyright, which did get the publishers a bit hot under the collar. Now, the latest on that is that the Association of American Publishers has sued for copyright infringement. There are a lot of strong voices on both sides of this. I'm tempted to kind of err on the side of caution, because the Internet Archive is a hugely valuable resource. It has, even just in the past couple of weeks, blown open political corruption here in the UK by showing a senior government advisor having changed his website and his blog after the fact, after claiming he'd said things in a blog post a year or two ago that he actually hadn't. He'd then gone in after saying that and tweaked the blog to make it look as if he had said that, and the Internet Archive Wayback Machine proved him wrong, because it had an archived copy of his website from the time he claimed to have said it. So I'm a fan of it. I'm kind of erring on the side of thinking, well, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But clearly there is an issue there with books under copyright being lent out freely. Of course, the situation does mean that people have to change the way they do things, and maybe this is something that will only be a past memory once the coronavirus crisis is over and the open library goes back to the way it was. In the traditional side of things, there is also some hoo-ha over fairs. The Frankfurt Buchmesse is going to be half in person and half online in October. That apparently hasn't gone down well with the industry either. They're not happy about that. HarperCollins, Macmillan and Bonnier have all withdrawn from the event. So they seem to be doing quite a lot of infighting, which is very odd considering the bigger problems they're having at the moment. But there we are. And on that, I wanted to bring you to another very interesting piece I read from Dean Wesley Smith, in which he's written an article which the title of is, wonderful grammar there, Adam, "Why Am I So Against Traditional Publishing?" And people might know Dean Wesley Smith as being a big indie voice. He's very keen on indie publishing and on pushing it. But he opens his article by pointing out that he's not a bitter person. He's not somebody who's only done indie and doesn't know the traditional wing of the market. He published 106 novels traditionally. So he knows both sides of the industry. He's had 106 traditional publishing contracts, and he is still very against traditional publishing. He's very much an indie voice now. He claims in his article, I'm quoting him verbatim here, "I would be a distant and faint memory in writing now if not for indie publishing. I never would have continued to work in the current traditional publishing environment. Never." He says that a lot of early stage writers have a very short-term view of being a writer, which of course is what the Indie Author Mindset Project tries to steer people away from and tries to get you looking at the long term. They think, Dean says, that just selling a few short stories and then getting a novel sold to a major publisher will make their career. But that is impossible to teach. It's impossible to teach them otherwise because it is a belief system based on a dream. He says that most writers who break into traditional publishing are done in 2 books. And when I say most, he says, I would give a conservative guess of 95%, more than likely closer to 99%. Well, I mean, we've all seen that traditional publishing was difficult and exploitative anyway, but it's got even worse as the publishers have started to suffer due to the dominance of the indie market. He says there is no long view in traditional publishing anymore. None. He says that he wrote upwards of 18 novels in 1 year for 7 different publishers under many pen names. He did that for over a decade, year in and year out, and he edited for New York publishers and other companies as well. He says there's no loyalty now. An author is nothing more than a number on a spreadsheet, and if the number doesn't match what someone thinks it should be, that author is gone. The short view for the indie, he says, is that you do lots of learning and paying money for workshops and conferences and courses and training, but that can be done and behind you in the same amount of time as a traditional writer will spend in the 3 to 5 years it will take to publish 1 book. He says, he talks about residuals and the fact that if you're an indie author and your books stay out there, they're still earning money. I've still got books that have been out for 10 years that are still earning me money every day, for example. As an indie, you own all the copyright for life. Your books don't spoil. You can keep them out there. You can keep remarketing them, redoing them. And of course, you are in control. It's a very, very interesting article in general. He says he's lived in both sides of the industry in over 40 years. As an author, he's watched the traditional market change. He was in the gold rush days of indie and watched that grow up. It's very, very interesting. I would suggest that all authors, regardless of what wing of the industry you're on, and I'm guessing you're probably an indie if you're listening to this, but either way, you should certainly read this. That's at deanwesleysmith.com on his blog there, the article, Why Am I So Against Traditional Publishing? Of course, I've read half of that out to you now, so you probably don't need to, but I strongly suggest you do. Thank you to everybody who's been sending in notes and quips and things, all very much appreciated. And one of the things that you have missed over the last couple of weeks, because you've all been telling me, is the Indie Author Mindset Ninja Tip. The tip this week is make the most of Vellum's store links. Store links in Vellum take a reader to the same store where they bought your book. So your Kindle ebook links to Amazon, your Apple Books version links to the Apple Bookstore, and so on. It means readers will be able to buy in their preferred store, and your book will be safe from the rejection that can happen when you link to the wrong one. You create a store link using the Add Text feature in the menu. You then enter your book identifiers, and Vellum will generate a copy of your book for each vendor. Just make sure you upload the right copy to the right vendor, and you won't have to worry about universal links or sending people to the wrong place. If none of that made any sense, and it's quite possible that it didn't, I do have a free course for Vellum, so you can find out what it is, how it can help you to format your books, and let me tell you now, it is absolutely brilliant. I've been using Vellum for years. I've not paid a penny on book formatting in a long time. Yeah, I'm able to generate gorgeous looking books that function brilliantly. I can make edits and changes to a book within 10 minutes and have a new version live. It really is fantastic. I've got a free course which will let you know what Vellum is, how you can use it, how you can make the most of it. It will cost you absolutely nothing. Just go to courses.indieauthormindset.com and scroll down to the free course, Formatting Your Books with Vellum. And all of the information about store links and all the wonderful features Vellum has, which you might not be aware of, even if you use Vellum regularly, that's all there in that course. Now, if you have enjoyed the Indie Author Mindset podcast, and if you get value from the Indie Author Mindset community, please do consider joining our Patreon program. If you join today, you'll get a personalised thank you on the podcast. You get a free Indie Author Mindset book of your choice. You get access to a live monthly Q&A event, a free copy of every Indie Author Mindset book as and when it's released, and a whole lot more. All from just $2, which could revolutionise your author career. Your support really does help keep the podcast and the Indie Author Mindset project running and empowering indie authors. So head over to patreon.com/Indie Author Mindset or check out the link in the show notes. And thank you very much to two new patrons who have joined in the past week, to Robin LeBron and Kate Jiggins. Welcome to you. If you want to get in touch, anybody, if you've got anything you want to ask or to mention, anything you want me to approach on the podcast, please do email podcast@indieauthormindset.com. I'm on Twitter @IAMindset, Instagram @AdamCroftBooks, and of course on Facebook in the Indie Author Mindset Facebook group. I'll be back next week with episode 27, if I'm counting correctly, which is highly unlikely on a Monday morning. But until then, stay safe and please do take care. This episode of the Indie Author Mindset podcast was presented by me, Adam Croft. The Indie Author Mindset podcast is sponsored by Ingram Spark, helping you get your book into over 40,000 bookstores and libraries worldwide. Get started today at ingramspark.com. The theme music for this podcast is by the Caesareans. Don't forget you can claim 50% off any Indie Author Mindset course by entering the promo code podcast at the checkout. Links are in the show notes. For more great tips and guidance, join the Indie Author Mindset group on Facebook.